Good morning, everybody. Today you'll be learning about the islands of the Caribbean. From Group F, I'm Laura Collazo. I'll be your first tour guide. Later on, you'll be hearing from Ezequiel Arocho, Nathan Laboy, and Lorenzo Suarez. Get your passports ready because today we're going to transport you through the Caribbean Sea. It is home to many islands somewhat similar to this one. However, each place has its own flavor. First stop, Cuba, an island filled with rich history and Latin pride. Sound familiar? We are landing in our largest and farthest neighbor of those we will be exploring today, and I'm going to give you a crash course on this kindred spirit. I'll start by giving you some facts about the Republic of Cuba. Livingston and Knight, in their recently updated article for the Enciclopedia Britannica, state it was claimed by Christopher Columbus for Spain in 1492, mainly for its raw sugar supply and as a military strategy. Cuba is a country comprised not only of the island itself, but also Isla de la Juventud and several minor archipelagos. The United States Census Bureau published an extensive report on all aspects of Cuba in 1909. In the history section, we learned that Cuba gained its independence from Spain in 1898 and formal independence from the US in 1902. It should be highly noted that this particular statement took years of war and countless revolutions. In the most recent census, Cuba totaled a population of over 11 million inhabitants. However, there is also a considerable amount of Cubans living in the U.S. Lorena Barberia, in her 2002 paper titled Remittances to Cuba, explains the transformation of Cuban economy. It is a centrally planned economy controlled majorly by the government and private enterprise. I could talk about its socio-economical and political reality for hours, but for the sake of time, I'll move on to other aspects. Cuba is known for its resourceful people and vibrant culture. La Habana is the capital. To this day, it is still a cultural institution. They host the largest film festival in all of Latin America every year. They've also had outstanding representation in arts and sports. Some famous Cuban writers you may know are José Martí and Alejo Carpentier. On the athletic side, track and field, baseball, and boxing are their most prominent sports participations. Javier Sotomayor is a high jumper who holds a world record since 1993. However, according to several local news outlets such as Mi País, baseball is considered to be the national sport. Lastly, Cuban music has Spanish and African roots. Their most popular native dances are the rumba, guaracha, and cha-cha. These are just some of the details that offer you a glimpse into the jewel of the Caribbean. All of these qualities make it so Cuban people have their own unique Caribbean identity. They're known for their resilience and inventiveness in the face of hardship. Like many of its island neighbors, Cuba has a rich culture and a profoundly turbulent history. This statement leads to the realization that there are many aspects that all Caribbean islands share, not just geography. You'll come to your own conclusions as the journey progresses. So now I'll leave you with your next tour guide, Ezequiel Arocho.
Great, a passport. I hope y'all had a blast for the biggest Caribbean island and have learned something about it. And notice she's so different to the one we are living in and love. But the journey doesn't stop there. Our next stop is the beautiful island of Jamaica. I will transport you guys to the small but vibrant island, rich in culture. Jamaica, or Jamaica, means the land of wood and water. It was the name given by the original indigenous who first ruled the island before colonization. According to the Jamaica Information Service, Christopher Columbus searched this island because the Cubans told him this was the land of the blessed gold. But it wasn't. In fact, there was no gold in Jamaica. Jamaica served mainly as a Spanish supply base. Food, arms, and horses were shipped here in the mission of conquering America. The colony received little attention from Spain, and this led to internal strifes. This made the island vulnerable to external attacks, such as pirates. In 1655, the English attacked it and made the Spaniards to surrender, and they claimed the island like theirs. The Taínos that first lived here were gradually exterminated and replaced by African slaves. The economy of the island was based on sugar, cocoa, and coffee. The African slaves served to produce them. Then the sugar became the main crop with around 403 plantations across the island. As stated by the Encyclopedia Britannica, the slave trade became a very popular option for the English in a way of making more profit. The treat toward the African slaves made that many of them ran away and established their communities, called the Maroons, in the mountains. This serves as motivation for many slave rebellions, such as the Easter Rebellion in 1760, and many more, that led to the abolition of the slave trade. It wasn't until August 6, 1962, that the British nation gave our fellow neighbors their independence. Jamaica is globally well known this day because there are very talented people in different aspects, such as music and sport. Reggae was originated in the capital of Jamaica, Kingston. Reggae has been motivation in the creation of hip-hop and reggaeton. There have been many reggae musicians, such as Bob Marley, that through the power of music, he talked about world peace and how to make a better world. On the other aspect, they produced the fastest man in the world, Usain Bolt. He holds the world record for the 100 meter, the 200 meter, and the 4x100 meter. Lastly, let's not forget that Jamaica is surrounded by beautiful beaches that compound the island. Some of them are the Bloody Bay, the Montego Bay, and the 7 Mile Beach. And these are just a few details about the land of wood and water. Being such a small island with such rich culture and talented people is just another proof that here in the Caribbean we have it all. I hope y'all have learned something about Jamaica, and if you haven't, you make sure you come. You're gonna love it. As the journey continues, you will find out that here in the Caribbean we aren't so different. Now I will leave you to your next tour guide, Nathan Laboy.
I guess we're going for a trip. Thank you, Ezequiel. The Dominican Republic is a mysterious and beautiful paradise that inherits a great history. This time around, we're gonna dig deep down into the history and the nature that lives within the island. We're gonna head west of Puerto Rico. We're gonna find our neighbor country, Dominican Republic. The Dominican Republic is such a beautiful place with beaches and overwhelming beauty. But I would argue that the best content in Dominican Republic lies in the history of this beautiful island. It's not a secret that the Caribbean history is built in resistance and endurance, and that cannot be more true than with the Dominican Republic. They actually faced two liberation wars, independence wars. One in 1844, where they liberated themselves from Haiti, that had actually taken over their side of the island. But by 1964, they were already under the Spanish monarchy again. But that didn't last long, because by 1965, they gained their own liberty again and became a free country. It was not all happiness, because by 1930, a general called Trujillo took over. He had been denominated like one of the worst dictators of all times and one of the worst dictators in the Caribbean. He had killed over 5,000 persons and the double of disappearance in that number. But by 1961, they managed to kill Trujillo. The thing is that by 1961 to 1965, big debt with the United States, and the United States actually conquered them or invaded them for a couple of months. Then the Reformist Party, just in 1965, took over, and it seems like a good thing, but actually they had the same values and morals that Trujillo did back then. It was a really hard time for the Dominican persons, but they prevailed. And by 2002, the Dominican Liberation Party took over. Since then, the Dominican Republic has been the fastest growing economy in the whole. The history is not only political. Actually, the Dominican Republic is very well known for how good they do in sports, especially in baseball. In the major league, they already got 3 Hall of Famers and a lot more to come, those being Vladimir Guerrero, Juan Marichal, and Pedro Martinez. But baseball is not the only sports that they actually passionate about. The women volleyball team is very, very good and has go to the Olympics already 3 times. And that's the most by any volleyball team in the Caribbean. As we dig into this beautiful island, we can get distracted by the beautiful beaches. But when we look inside of what makes Dominican Republic a truly beautiful gem of the Caribbean, it's inside the history. Not only political, but in sports and in music. Combining that with the species that we found in the nature, and we can now understand the beauty of Dominican Republic. Now we're gonna go to the neighbors of Dominican Republic in Haiti and with my friend Lorenzo. See you, man.
Thanks, Nathan. Now, we cross the border and we set course to Haiti, which its history might sound similar. Haiti is a country right next to the Dominican Republic, and it is separated by a border, unlike previous countries mentioned. Haiti has a mixed culture with France, Spain, Africa, and its native Taino. And Haiti is much more than poverty and natural disasters. So let's go back a bit in history for a second. Editors of Encyclopedia Britannica wrote about Haiti's history. In December of 1492, Spain invaded the whole island. In 1697, Spain gave 1/3 of the La Isla La Española to France, and France named this third Saint Dominique. France imported so many African slaves that by 1789, a population of 520,000 people, 452,000 were slaves. Nationsonline.org wrote an article on how African slaves fled the harsh treatment from agricultural life and formed communities on remote areas of the colony. Some runaways formed militant communities that would form revolts and mass escapes on other plantations. Then in 1804, they won its independence against France. So now that we know a little bit about its history, what is Haiti doing right now? Rest Avec Freedom is an organization devoted to abolish child slavery in Haiti. They wrote an article about 5 positive things from Haiti. The first is it's resilient, and we learned that talking about its history. The second, it's miles of beautiful clear beaches. Culture Trip wrote an article about how Laboy has the longest overwater zip line in the world. They also have mountains which can be traveled or hiked, and Pic de Sel is its highest mountain with standing at 8,773 feet. Also, since they have a mixed culture, they have mixed cuisines, mixing spices and flavors from France, Spain, Africa with the twist of their native Tainos. Rest Avec also wrote how Haiti was starting to make a comeback with using tourism as their income. Putting aside all the pain, Haiti is a place that has a lot of potential for tourism as well as every other island from the Caribbean. It's remarkable how much history all of these islands share. And I hope you guys learned as much as we did making this project and that you guys are safe.